Chairman, members of the committee, my name is James Quintero. I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation. It's an honor to be here this evening to testify in strong support of HB 5019. Earlier this year, the Texas Public Policy Foundation released a three-part video series examining the people and groups profiting from school district spending. And what these videos reveal is that ISD profiteers are working together to rig the system so that elections favor the government's position, bonds are packed with pork, and taxes always go up. Now, in the middle of this dark money web are groups like the Texas Association of School Boards, whose taxpayer-funded operations are used to promote left-wing ideology, practice political advocacy, and propagandize school board members. One need not look far for evidence of these things either. Consider the example provided in your handout, which spotlights an instance at TASB's 2024 Summer Leadership Institute, wherein outside consultants told trustees to use teacher pay raises as a weapon because they'll need teachers angry enough to apply political pressure in the upcoming Texas legislative session. Now, while this particular effort failed, partly because of the public controversy it stirred, it was a clear attempt to weaponize teacher pay against the legislature, and had it been successful, it would have enabled the profiteers to fortify their political positions and funnel more money back to themselves. Now, this circumstance is fairly troubling, I'd say, but what's more alarming to consider is how this profiteering activity in its totality is depriving classrooms of needed tax dollars. In fact, our research suggests that only about 40% of all annual spending goes to the classroom. Please. So for those reasons, I want to encourage the body to look favorably on HB 5019. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, members, any questions? Yes. Okay, we'll start with the Representative Hinojosa and work our way around.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
Yes, ma'am.
It's late and I'm slower at processing at this point in session and at this point in the day. You said, I think your comments are written, so I'm going to ask you to refer to them because I want to get exactly what you said. You said taxpayer dollars are being used for left-wing something in propaganda. Can you repeat what you said, please?
To promote left-wing ideology, practice political advocacy, and propagandize school board members.
Political ad. Isn't that what your organization does, except for right-wing advocacy and ideology?
That's correct. We are an advocacy organization funded by private tax dollars. Private monies, private monies.
Right. But you don't pay property taxes on your property that you operate out of, do you?
Well,
your property, in fact, there's a special sweetheart deal that has been arranged, and you pay no property taxes on your location here right down the street from the Capitol. Isn't that correct?
So just like any other charitable organization, we enjoy a 501c3 tax exempt status. That's
what
correct.
Is charity about? You said you do exactly what you are attacking the groups in this bill of doing, but you do it for the right wing. What is charitable about that?
Ms. Hinojosa, this bill does not have to do with Texas Public Policy Foundation, so let's keep this directed towards the
Chairman,
contents of the bill.
Respectfully, I want to understand the difference. I want to understand the difference between Mr. Quintero's criticism of where taxpayer money is going, just like his organization is receiving a taxpayer benefit for the work that he does, yet on the other end of the political spectrum.
What's interesting to consider about that criticism is if you apply it to other circumstances like homeowners. Would you say that homeowners are receiving some sort of taxpayer-funded benefit because they have a residence homestead exemption?
Homeowners are paying taxes already, and and there are lots of policy reasons that we exempt it. For one, to make home ownership more affordable. But anyway, my point is there's some black kettle calling here, is what I'm seeing. And I would hope that this bill, if it doesn't already include a provision to prohibit the kind of sweetheart property tax break that TPPF gets for their right-wing ideological stances, if that's not already included in this bill, I hope that I would like to work with the author of this bill to make sure we do an amendment to include this also kind of taxpayer-funded ideological work.
Yes, Mr. Quintero, could you tell us how much school district funds that TASB manages?
That's a good question. You know, one of the challenges when considering TASB's finances is that a lot of it's opaque. Now, you have some aspects that you can analyze in the I-990s, which nonprofits are required to file annually. But a lot of that information is dated and it's not readily accessible for most people. And so, to my knowledge, TASB is approximately a $100 million enterprise that manages about $17 billion in its investment pool. And so that's a sizable chunk of money that generates, I would say, a tremendous amount of management fees for the board that it then utilizes for political advocacy efforts, both here at the legislature as well as in local communities.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Speak to TASB's original incarnation, but I can tell you that the most recent iteration has become overly politicized. And of course, let's set aside the Summer Leadership Institute incident. We can also draw from our experience with TASB and the NSBA, where TASB refused to put distance between itself and the group that was calling for the criminalization of parents who were raising concerns in school boards. And it took a lot of public pressure and outcry to finally get TASB to move away from that group. There's also their most recent advocacy agenda, and there's of course lots in here to take issue with, particularly on the tax side. But I'll just read you two quick bullets, and these are from the cornerstone principles, right? So these are the foundational principles that the TASB group has identified that it stands on. One of them is preventing the diversion of public funds through vouchers, tax credits, education savings accounts, and other mechanisms, which is to say that they oppose school choice using our tax dollars. The second one is the promotion of equity, intentional eradication of systemic racism, and the recognition of all cultures and races that have contributed to the rich history of Texas. I think in that bullet, what you see is perhaps a flirtation with DEI and other social justice causes. And again, that is funded by our tax dollars. So, you know, when TPPF or other conservative organizations take issue with TASB today, I would suggest that it's on the basis of its most recent egregious advocacy efforts that really have no foundation or value in Texas public policy today.
Well, yeah, I think Representative Hinojosa established that you're also a taxpayer-funded, supported organization, and that you are equally engaged in this kind of advocacy. And I don't have a problem. You know, I would never bring a bill to stop TPPF from, you know, advocating for your interests or the interests of your donors or your board members like Tim Dunn. But I have a problem when the same kind of power is used to go after an organization that is disagreeing with some of your stances, especially when that organization is just reflecting the views of their members.
So I think
that's the thing that I think bothers a lot of people on this dais and in this body, is the feeling that one group is being targeted, one perspective is being canceled, so to speak, and another is allowed to proliferate unchecked. And that kind of imbalance, I think, is what sets the alarms off for a lot of folks in this committee and in the House.
I think one of the distinctions we need to remember here is that the foundation operates under a 501c3 status that allows it to retain its own resources, whereas TASB is taking in the resources of others. And it's doing so not only through membership dues, but it's got a lot of different revenue streams that it's developed. And again, the issue here is not only the diversity of other people's money that it's taking in, but how it's using that money. So I think that's an important distinction that needs to be considered as well.
I mean, the fact that taxpayers are supporting your multi-million-dollar facility a few blocks from here, and you're allowed to push a ideological right-wing agenda here in the body, which is your right. I think the fact that that's allowed to happen and no one's bringing a bill to shut you down, yet you and your organization in particular are pushing bills to shut down educators and school board members across the state, to me just reeks of hypocrisy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Chair recognizes Representative Bryant.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would add to that, Mr. Quintero, I'm on another committee, Pensions Committee. I see you in there all the time, and I'm sure the other members see you, or your colleagues in their committees as well. And you get paid, right? And the money you're paid is tax-deductible, quote, charitable contributions from the billionaires that fund your organization. Now, I already know the answer to how much these two people are getting paid, which is zero. And I doubt if they're getting reimbursed for driving home tonight. So there's an enormous imbalance right here. And second, I would point out, when you come in here and use words like ISD profiteering, you might bear in mind there are former school board members on this panel up here, okay? I grew up in a town where we knew every school board member because it wasn't a very big town. I represent a big city now, and I know nearly all the school board members. I don't know how they find the time to do that kind of work. And for you to come here and make their jobs harder by making all these accusations, in my view, is quite unjustified. And to use a term like ISD profiteers, I mean, for goodness sakes, I can't believe we can get people to serve on these school boards.
Well, sir,
So
I may
just-
not be a
I'm not
trustee,
asking
but I
for-
am married to a
I'm not-
trustee.
Mr. Quintero.
Yes, ma'am.
Quintero. I can never get that right. Okay, so I know that, you know, just like Raise Your Hand is an advocacy group, TPPF is as well, but you don't manage billions of dollars of public money, do you?
That's correct. We do not manage billions of dollars in public money, nor do we receive management fees for any of that either.
So, I mean, that's a huge difference, and that's what we're talking about here, is there's a difference between charitable organizations that advocate for different causes on both sides of the fence, and this organization that is literally, it's billions of dollars of public money that is being managed here. Would not schools save a lot of money if the state managed those type of things? Like, you can already go on TA website and find school board training. You can already find insurance out there that is not necessarily through TASB. You can use other things besides buy board. There's a lot of options out there that school districts can use, or even, you know, going through TA that I think would save billions and billions of dollars.
I think that's an excellent idea, not only as it applies to perhaps warehousing some of the training sessions with TEA, so that every district can access those trainings through a state-provided program and forego the cost to TASB, but also perhaps moving those investment pool management to TEA as well. I think that's a win-win for state and localities, because the state can provide your school districts with a lower administrative cost, and of course, school districts will have extra resources to utilize. So I think there's a number of ways that are put forward by this bill that could potentially save school districts money and benefit taxpayers in some really fantastic ways.
Well, and I think one of the other things that does concern me is, on one hand, TASB is saying that they're neutral, they're not political, you know, and I mean, I spent 3 different terms on the State Board of Education, and I attended some of the TASB things where we would pass, you know, general textbook content standards. And then I'd go to a TASB conference where they're basically telling you how to get around that, you know, around a rule or something that we put into statute as the legislature. How can that be? To me, that's frustrating because that's not being neutral. I don't know the validity of it. I can't cite where I read it, but also during the ESA debate. I mean, we have parents that are taxpayers that are paying, you know, for TASB through their taxes that they're paying, that the school district is paying out to TASB. And yet they're against parents having a choice. And that's, and they did some polling on the word voucher, ended up being the negative word. And I mean, why is TASB even involved in that? I mean, that has nothing to do, the ESAs took no money away from TASB, they took no money out of the foundation school program, yet we have them taking this position against parents, and that, just to have testifier after testifier come up here from the schools and not call it by the proper term. Education savings accounts are drastically different than vouchers, but they were using the word vouchers because there was polling done by TASB that would be a negative. Just little irritating things like that where you want to say that they're neutral. We know your position as TPPF. We know raise your hands position. You're very out there with those things. But to sit there and say that you're not political, that TASB is not political, when they are, is very disingenuous, because they're always involved in that. As long as I've been in 40 years of education, they've been involved in a political advocacy of some kind and taking positions on things. That is not neutral.
No, and I think most Texans would be alarmed to know the extent to which TASB is involved not only in state affairs, but also in moving the needle at the local level. So if you think about the access they have to every school district, when they promulgate guidance, it's to every district, which generally adopts that guidance whole hog. And so they have an in, or they have an avenue to promote things like gender ideology, right? That was a controversy that erupted a few years ago, right? So there are avenues and ways in which TASB has exclusive access to school board trustees that no other group has, and it's utilizing our money to push its agenda.
Thank you.
All right, Chair,
Let me put it this way. Let's just stick to the bill.
Yes, sir.
We've heard enough of everybody else. What can the state do, this bill, that TASB can't do? You're for the bill, so what can the bill do that TASB doesn't do? And can the state do better?
So it can provide training that is absent a political angle, right? So if you think about, again, the sorts of trainings that are provided to trustees, I think oftentimes bend in a particular political direction. The trainings need not be complicated, and I think there's a lot of very basic things that can be provided to trustees through the TEA. And so removing that function from TASB and eliminating even the possibility of politicization, it would be a positive step.
Good, good, good. And so, Carol, you said your wife was a school board member?
Yes, sir. Very proud to announce that on Saturday, voters re-elected my beautiful wife to a second term, which if I look a little sunburned, I am, because I spent all day at the polls on Saturday. She's doing a terrific job. You know, it's been interesting to see a kind of behind the scenes viewpoint of TASB, you know, as the husband of a trustee. I get just a little bit of a glimpse into the organization that I wouldn't have otherwise, which is, I think, why I tend to harp on the political angle just a bit more than I would, because I do see some of the behind-the-scenes mechanics that lead me to believe this organization isn't necessarily interested, first and foremost, with the well-being of taxpayers. And for me, as the policy director for the Taxpayer Protection Project, that's my first and foremost concern. I want to make sure that our money is well spent and only spent on those things that are absolutely necessary. And when you introduce the TASB influence into the process, I think it moves us away from that.
Well, and I'm not going to ask you what school board your wife's on, but I would assume that there are members of TASB.
Yes, sir.
And so nothing that TASB is doing is benefiting. And how many school districts do we have? Like it's 1,200?
Roughly 1,026 traditional school
Okay,
districts plus
1,026
charters.
And plus charters. And so there's nothing that they've done to kind of move the needle to advance education.
You know, one of the things that I questioned TASB on a couple of years ago and that they seem to include here in their most recent legislative agenda is this bit about.
What year was that? I mean, you're reading, so let me.
So this is the 2024-26 TASB
Okay.
advocacy
Thank-
agenda.
Thank you.
And one of the bullets that they include as part of their cornerstone principles is the intentional eradication of systemic racism. And the question that I raised in a piece that I published earlier is the fact that, you know, TASB has largely been in charge for the last 50-plus years. So if we have a system in which there is systemic racism, where have they been? What have they been doing? And why is it only now that they're concerned about it? So I'm not sure that they have moved our system in a better direction, either fiscally or from a social perspective.
Tara, I was in the back, catching a water break.
Yes,
And
sir.
I heard you say, I think that your wife just got either elected or reelected to
Yes, sir.
a school board. And I felt guilty because I was thanking these two individuals earlier for their service. And I want to thank your wife for her service. So
Thank you.
I did not want you to be offended that I did not.
If it helps, I'm
recognize
on
your
daddy
wife.
duty a lot.
I know
Because
you
she's
are.
very busy.
And we're grateful for her service.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Tallarico.